Good evening, everyone. My name is Chantal Williamson, and my topic is African American women and obesity. First, I'd like to define obesity, which is in the Western culture defined as a BMI over 31. Another definition that I came across in my research is obesity defined as a medical condition in which excess fat has accumulated to the extent that it may have a negative effect on health. The second definition is more of a subjective definition in that if you're able to carry your weight better, then you might not be obese, right? But we know that we use the BMI scale with weight and height to determine obesity. So we will use the first definition. Obesity in America has been on the rise for the last 20 to 30 years. African American women are now the second most obese population, only second to Mexican Americans. African American women have the highest morbidity and mortality rate for heart disease, cancer, and stroke, all of which have obesity as a risk factor. Being obese can raise blood cholesterol and triglyceride levels and increase blood pressures, which can affect the heart. Obesity also serves as a risk factor in cancer because fat tissues produce excess amounts of estrogen, and high levels of estrogen have been associated with risk of breast cancer and endometrial cancers. Being overweight or obese can also lead to a buildup of plaque in your arteries, and eventually an area of the plaque can rupture, causing a blood clot, and it can lead to a stroke. Genetics. So there have been many studies to test the role that genes play in obesity, like clustering of cases within families, the congruency of body weight for twins, and the discovery of genes associated with obesity that reinforce the genetic dimension of obesity. But with that being said, it is also thought that a combination of environment and genes may lead to obesity. Sociological factors. So within the African American community, minority women who are obese are 10 times more likely to be poor. They account for 34% of people living in poverty. Access to preventative care, cultural beliefs, sexism, and racism contribute to the decline in health status of African American women. According to Bruner, long-term exposure to adverse circumstances may contribute to the metabolic syndrome that alters the body's ability to clear glucose, resulting in increased obesity. African American women are altering their diets and nutrition because of available financial resources and costs of food. This results in the consumption of a high percentage of calories, fatty foods, less fibers and vegetables, as well as a high consumption of fast food. Also, healthier food choices may be limited in the poverty-stricken communities. Lack of education is related to obesity because persons with higher education are aware of the resources available to them. Physiological factors. Depression is a major physiological factor in the African American community on a whole. African American women do not readily seek treatment for depression because of cultural shame, lack of trust, fear of being referred to as crazy, and a lack of access to healthcare. Depression can cause a fluctuation in hormones that can trigger holding on to adipose tissue cells. Women sometimes feel guilty for working too hard, not being there for their family and children, and this is a form of stress that can release a hormone called leptin, and it triggers weight gain. African American women and body image. some African American women differ from Western cultures. In some situations, they consider being thick more attractive than being thin. Cues are usually taken from the men in their life, their husbands or their fathers or family members. I sometimes get comments of, go eat a cheeseburger, or are you eating, from like family members because I'm thin. Sometimes with African American women, they're afraid to exercise because they don't want to, quote unquote, have muscles like a man or look sickly or too thin. We have to realize as healthcare providers that physiological, sociological factors and body image are roadblocks that we have to address when dealing with this community. African American women have different traditions and ideas about health and disease. It all depends on their heritage, their age, and how they grew up. Some of the traditions are more in line with the church. For many African American women, the church is a source of support, comfort, and hope. Sometimes everything that is done is governed by their belief in God. Some African American cultures believe in unnatural and natural diseases. The unnatural disease occurs when evil spirits influence and alter God's plan, and the natural disease occurs as a natural punishment for sins. One main belief in the African American community is that God will take care of all things, including disease and your health and your family. Western healthcare system. So in my research, I have found that African American women have a mistrust for the healthcare system in America for several reasons. One of them being none of the healthcare providers look like them, and so their belief is that there's not an understanding of their struggle. Number two, whenever they go to the doctor's office, they are met with rude staff, long waits, and quick exams, and they never get their questions answered or directly answered. Another reason is the thought that money is the force behind the healthcare system and not actual people caring. And fourth, but not least, is that it's very expensive. So a lot of people can't afford it. And so when they do go to the doctor, they expect that they will get optimal care. And sometimes it just is not the case. Some of the strategies when dealing with this population is listening, building relationships, and trust. These are key strategies to use when speaking with this community. You also want to provide information about serious health conditions associated with being overweight and obese. You want to promote weight control as a means to increase self-esteem. You also want to recognize that the perception may be different in the Black community about what obesity is. I was reading an article that did a study that asked African American women if they thought they were obese. And then they gave them a diagram of different size figures and told them to circle which one they thought was obese. Most of them chose a bigger picture than what was really considered obese. And you also want to encourage group exercise and involving the church, as well as a spiritual aspect, because a lot of what they do is governed by the church and God. So great strides have been made in the research of the relationship between African American women and obesity. It is important that we continue to work with the community to encourage healthy habits of nutrition and exercise. It's also important to include their support systems, whether it be the church or family or both. But an emphasis must be placed on how it can help their family in the long run. to maximize outcome. Thank you.